Welcome to Advanced Spreadsheet Techniques in Microsoft Excel. This course requires an intermediate knowledge of spreadsheets such as Microsoft Excel, LibreOffice Calc, or Google Sheets. A basic knowledge of computer programming is helpful. The software and version used in this course is Microsoft Excel 2019, although users of various desktop versions currently supported by Microsoft should benefit. The learning level is intermediate. Upon completing this course, we want you to be able to describe the purpose of data vortices, decision matrices, user-defined functions, and arrays, and use them to manipulate spreadsheet data. Previous courses have devoted time and attention to UI and UX, or user interface and user experience. The UIX is no less important in this course, but focus will be on specific tools for data manipulation and analysis. Specifically, we are going to deal with data vortices, decision matrices, user-defined functions, arrays in spreadsheets, and arrays in CodeScript. Our first topic is data vortices. A data vortex is a manipulation of data that envisions a swirling effect created during data classification and summarization. Let's look at some examples of data vortices. In this situation, we have been presented with some disparate client data. We have data from the bank, and we have data from PayPal, and it is our job to summarize that data and determine the total amount of revenue on a cash basis. Before we begin, let's look at the data on both of these worksheets. First, we'll look at the bank. As you can see, we have extracted certain data from the bank and totaled it so that we have a check total. We also have a problem in that certain deposits from customers are not consistent in their description. As you can see on the AJR computers, most of this suffix number is the same except for the very middle portion of that number. And as you can see, it varies depending on the entry. There are other deposits that have similar designations that keep them from being 100% the same. So in order for us to accumulate and consolidate that information, we're going to have to make them more consistent. Similarly, on the PayPal worksheet, we have extracted certain data and totaled it so that we have check totals. We can see that the customer names are listed here as well, which means we have to get the customer revenue from each of these worksheets summarized so that we can combine them and yet still have the amount from each individual customer. We also have to, in the case of PayPal and the bank, negate the fact that when we withdraw from the bank account or withdraw from the PayPal, which is noted as a bank account, it's sending it from the PayPal account to the bank. We want to be able to ensure that all of the money withdrawn to go to the bank did in fact get deposited into the bank, and we don't want to count it twice. So let's start with the bank and see how we can best do that. Before we begin, let me make a couple of points. We're going to use Data Vortices in order to accomplish our objectives. However, the steps we are going to use are by no means a one-size-fits-all situation. You have to use your individual needs in order to determine how best to use the tools that we are about to explore. The second thing is that we are taking the long way around in this situation so that we can fully understand the concepts that are being demonstrated. There are faster ways to do this, and we will even look at one technique that is a variation that can help speed up the process somewhat. Also, we are using a very small data set. It does not matter how large the data set is for these techniques to be valuable tools in your toolbox. You could just as easily be using data sets of 100,000 records or more, and these techniques would still work. So let's begin. We've already done the work, so we're going to skip to step 3 here and work to create truncated descriptions that we will use right here. Now, the reason that we're doing that is because, as we said, the descriptions are not exactly the same, and we need consistency. So to create consistency from the entries that are shown, we need to truncate them far enough back that we can get that consistency. Now, with a little trial and error, I determined that 33 characters was a reasonable length to create those truncations. And as I have listed it here, you could vary that length for each one of these truncated descriptions. In a later example, you will see that I used one standard truncation. So there's a lot of different, again, variations. You have to use your own situation and your own preferences to lay this out accordingly. But this is the way we have approached it here. We have created the truncated descriptions right here. Let me move this over just a little bit. You can see this is D19, which is the description right here. And we have done it based on 33 characters. Now, I've literally typed in the 33 here in order to make it more interactive. We could have and probably should have locked it in to the length that is shown here. And I actually did that in one of the other spreadsheets. We'll see that in a minute, but one of the other worksheets. But this is how I arrived at them here, and I just copied all the way down for the entire data set. And then we created a preliminary alias. We got an alias description here that we wanted to use for the final output for the roll-ups. And we'll look at this one in a moment. It's blank for a reason. We have it up here already. But we'll look at this right now. Now, we used an if wrapper and an is in a wrapper around the VLOOKUP. The reason for that is that the VLOOKUP, if it does not find any data that matches will return a hash NA. And we don't want to see those hash NAs all over the page. Aesthetics aside, it can hide errors that we would be looking for, and we would be dismissing all the hash NAs and all of the errors because we figure they're going away whenever we add the data. And we could miss an error that was actually a reason for concern. So we have developed an is in a wrapper that says if the VLOOKUP function returns a hash NA, we're going to return instead an empty cell, not a blank. There is not a blank. That is two double quotes side by side. So that's an empty cell, not a blank cell. And then we're going to wrap the whole thing in an if wrapper. And if that doesn't happen, then we're going to perform the VLOOKUP function and give us the return the results. Okay. Now, we also are going to give ourselves an out because we're going to automate this as far as is practical, but we need to recognize that in some cases we may have exceptions. So we need to be able to handle those exceptions and build in some methodology for us to handle those exceptions. That would be our override column. We have here that if J19, which is here, is empty, two double quotes side by side, then we will return I19, which is here. Otherwise, it'll return J19 here. Next, we begin the process of the roll-up. We come here to the SUMIF, and we start looking at G, which is our numbers. And we look at G19 to G112, which is our data set. We then look at K19 to K112, which is here on the alias description. And we are looking to match, in this case, I4. It'd be I5, I6, etc. And we're going to roll up accordingly. The last thing we're going to do here is to determine whether or not it is a revenue item. And the reason that we left this blank is because we're rolling up all of the PayPal transfers here. We don't want to do it again, so we leave it blank. All right, that gives us 10,235.73, and we have a PayPal transfer which is going to the bank, or coming to the bank, excuse me. It's coming from PayPal to the bank of 13,922.21. This gives us a check total to look at to verify that the amounts that left PayPal arrived at the bank. And this is the amount of revenue items. Notice we keyed it based on the Y. This is the amount of revenue items that hit the bank, not including PayPal. Notice we did not put a revenue item there because we want to determine that amount of revenue, and we could have done that, but it wouldn't have given us our breakdown of the individual customers that we wanted. And we've got an individual breakdown here, but it only is for the ones that were direct deposit to the bank. So now we've got to go to the PayPal portion of this analysis.